Hi there, Andrew McComb here, and welcome to Outlier. In this week's episode, I'm on the Old Ghost Road, and I'm going to be speaking to one of the 4 founding members, Phil Rossiter. Guys, seriously, this is a bucket list adventure that I'm looking forward to. Let's go and meet Phil. Phil Rossiter, welcome to Outlier.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to be here.
What an outlier destination.
It is. It's hard to beat, actually, isn't it? I could think of worse spots to be than right now.
So it's an outlier destination designed by outliers for outliers. Where are we?
Well, we're on the Old Ghost Road, which is on the northern part of the west coast of the South Island of New Zealand. And in terms of where on the Old Ghost Road, we're about 1,300 metres above sea level, 26 kilometres in from the starting point or the southern end of the trail, basically. So we're in the mighty Lyell Range.
Well, looking around, I'm seeing many ranges, I guess, or mountains, and it looks like pretty inaccessible land. But tell us about the start of the story, mate, because I know it's very inspirational.
Yeah, that's actually one of the hardest questions to answer, because where does the story start? It could have started 300 million years ago with the ground we're on here and that being formed, or it could have started 160 years ago with gold being found just south of here and north of here, and so I think that's where I'll choose to start, because that is what gave rise to this surveying of a route to try and connect these 2 goldfields that are just south of us here and just north of us over here. And that was a plan from the late 1860s, and that never eventuated for one reason or another. And so the story just hit pause for about 130 years, and in 2007 that old survey plan with that very lofty aim of a trail connecting the 2 fell into the right hands. That's the simple way to say it. And that person started dreaming about, what might be possible and how much of this old track actually existed. And one thing snowballed into another, and that was actually the start of the Old Ghost Road as we know it, 2007, which was some really big days and weeks and months just traipsing through this backcountry, understanding how much of that old trail was there, and could it be, brought back to life, and if so, what needed to be done. So yeah, that's kind of when this story, or the last chapter of this story, started.
So I'm looking at where we are, and we are literally in the middle of Jurassic Park, and it could be anywhere, right? But it's in one of the most remote regions of the world. And what was the go? Like, someone found the trail and they said, let's give it a crack, or they went for a walk and thought we could do something with this, or...
All of those things, yeah. All of those things. So Weasel and Stacky, 2 of the early proponents, decided to set forth for multiple trips over weeks, basically traipsing up and down this river valley that's over here in front of us off camera, and that was to understand how much of that trail was there. The answer was zip, none, and so that's where we decided, well, shall we try and create that and join the existing old historic formations that were on either end. So that's what we set out to do, and it became very apparent that that was incredibly tough country, lots of creeks, lots of flooding issues, terrible geology, shady, dark, gloomy, and it was another one of our team at that time that suggested, well, why don't we think about climbing up onto these tops and making our way along the tops to drop back into that valley far further along. And so Wayne Pratt was the name of that person, and to Wayne's credit, that's what brought the Old Ghost Road up onto the mighty Lyell Range, and that was another key moment in the genesis of the Old Ghost Road.
So from a vision perspective, we weren't actually supposed to be here right now. It was all below us. Is that
correct? Well said. Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of a straight line from south to north, and so it came up the Lyell Valley over a saddle and went straight on down what we call the south branch of the Mokihinui River. So we've taken an eastern detour to climb up onto a range, make our way along a range to drop back down, and it adds just a totally different dimension. Otherwise, we'd have 85 kilometres of bush canopy trail, and now we've got this amazing subalpine open tops experience, which anyone that comes and does it, I think it speaks for itself.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
And obviously it's not just up, is it? You've got, as you mentioned, you've got the alpine forest down there, you've got the rivers, you've got, there's the Boneyard. What's the Boneyard?
The Boneyard's an incredible piece of geology. I've been lucky enough to have a look around much of the world, and I've never seen a place like the Boneyard. So that is essentially just a big exploded mountain face that was created through probably two, but at least one significant earthquake through the 1900s. So 1929 and 1968, two large earthquakes in this area, and they sent so much energy through this big sort of limestone unit, and it hit an open face, and there was nothing there to, for that energy to keep travelling. So it exploded this face and sent, I want to say house-sized rocks, but house is an understatement. We've got rocks and boulders the size of small commercial buildings, basically, that are just littered down this hillside. So yes, the trail makes its way up through there. It is like a big wrecking yard or a boneyard of ancient monoliths and dinosaurs, and that's where it took its name from.
Very nice. So as far as access for can the general public access, or how does it work?
Absolutely. This is all what we call public conservation land in New Zealand, so free to access this land, and so absolutely it is. We're into a national park here now. These lands that we are in right now were added to a national park last year, and so absolutely, hook in.
And is it just trampers, or?
Well, the business case, we knew that this would be an incredible mountain biking trail, and that's where we could justify making all this effort. It turns out that it is a fabulous tramping trail as well, and as of now, we basically almost 40% of the use on this trail is from the tramping market. So majority are mountain bikers, and it's an incredible trail where you get to bike up into the subalpine environment, and so that's no mystery that it's taken off, but it's increasingly being discovered by what we call the tramping market, or hiking, overseas, as a great thing to do. It's a long way, it's a 5-day trip, 85 kilometres.
And would you start at Murchison?
Yeah, well, it's a very remote trail, and so the trailheads are literally in the middle of nowhere, and so the southern trailhead down beneath us here is at a little old historic town called Lisle. Nothing exists now, but it was a bustling little gold town 100 years ago, and then it finishes just inland from a little hamlet called Seddonville on the northern west coast. So Westport's kind of the hub, but yes, it's accessible from the Nelson, Murchison end, and a lot of east coasters coming across from Christchurch as well. So a lot of service providers have popped up that make those logistics go away for people, with car relocations or shuttle deliveries, etc., from wherever you are. So yeah, it's been great how the community's sort of responded and filled in those gaps to make it easy.
And you, as a tramper or a biker, you could bring your own gear and look after it yourself, or is there a service where you can have it dropped off in front of you and walk for the day or bike for the day, or how does that work?
Yeah, there is, but by far the majority of users are, self-discovery, bringing their own gear. They might hire bikes, but they're doing it all themselves, and it's entirely doable that way if you pick it apart, and you take the time to do it. So we do have guiding companies that operate and provide equipment and cook for their clients, etc. But that's a small part of the overall market that uses the Old Ghost Road.
What type of probably a better question is, who are the types of outliers that would want to do this sort of thing? It's obviously, we're pretty extreme sort of environment. Does it take that sort of mindset?
Well, I think it does, and we certainly are happy to promote that, because we don't want to be culpable in enticing folk that aren't prepared or used to these sorts of environments to just come and get a fright. That's not what we're about. So we certainly do our best to impress upon people this is a really serious undertaking, and that self-regulates by and large. And so, yes, it's wild, it's remote, you're on your own, and so naturally it attracts an outlier personality. But the really cool thing to observe over the years is just the growth in every kind of demographic. So lots of families and parents bringing young ones and helping them through, and that warms my heart personally. That's something that I find really important in life, is to see that younger generation being introduced to the beauty of the outdoors and what's special about it. We've had folk in their 90s go through this trail. It's incredible, quite common for low 80s to be tramping through. through. It's just incredible what, the people out there and their fitness and fortitude to guts it out and move through. So you see all walks of life take it on. And some just do it that you think, wow, gee, this is going to be a tough outing, and they do it with a smile, and they have short sleeves on, it'll be snowing or sleeting, and they're as happy as Larry. So they breed them tough, and you certainly get to see the tough on this trail.
Absolutely. And what is some of the feedback that you get after people have completed the trail?
The feedback's humbling, to be fair, really humbling and overwhelmingly humbling, and they're not isolated things. That's sort of the norm, to be fair. That is important because this is hard work. It is hard work to keep an 85,000 metre organism alive and do it day in, day out, and so you need that energy going back into the system. So knowing that you are creating that opportunity for people to get out and reconnect with nature and challenge themselves and be fit and healthy and active and share those experiences with friends or family is really important. And so that's the currency we kind of live on and fuel ourselves on.
So it's a love or a passion project?
It is. It absolutely is. It always was from the start. I don't think anything else would have got us through. If it was a job, I think the love would have gone out of it long ago. It was very much a labour of love. That was apparent very early on, and I'm just very fortunate and lucky that we all fell head over heels in love with it. Yeah.
Well, if we look at it too, like from the turning of the first sod, I guess, if you want to call it that, to completion, what's the time frame now between completion to now?
Yeah, so we started restoring the old historic trails as they existed on either end in the late 2008s and in earnest in 2009. Okay, and we started building new trail where there was none in 2011, and in December 2015 cut the ribbon and open the old Ghost Road in her full-length glory. So we're going to be 5 years into being an operating trail later this year, and that's all just gone in a flash of a pan, and it's been amazing. But it's been 2007 till now, what are we talking with, for 13-14 year journey from when the idea was conceived to being here doing it.
Would you say that it's become a bit of an outlier in the world of mountain biking and tramping? Like, is it renowned globally?
Oh, we've certainly hear and detect that it's got an international presence and profile. We hear all sorts of classic stories about people meeting in small towns in Europe or the States and sharing a story that they've both done the old Ghost Road. It's amazing how the global communication channels get back and the things you hear about. So yes, it has started to enter onto the radar of internationals without a doubt. Yeah.
So I guess a bit of a bragging thing, is it, if you've done the old Ghost Road?
Up to the individual, all I know is that it's not easy, and if you can get through this, then you can hold your chin pretty high. So it's a long way, and depending on what the elements want to throw at you, it'll either turn it from something that was pretty tough to something that was bloody tough.
Well, we've got a perfect day today, but it's not always like this.
No, it's not always like this at all. No, you'd struggle to even hold on to the ground here on certain days, Andrew. So, that's part of the majesty of the place. We've got a lot of people that have come through, and it's been magnificent weather other than the 3 hours that they've been moving through this bit of the trail. And so their overriding sentiment is, we're just going to have to come back and see those views we missed out on.
And it's more than just for the bikers and trampers. You're running races now, 85k races and one-day races. It's not multi-sport, but it's bike races.
Yeah, correct. We started in the early days with a mountain biking event that sort of started right here and made its way down, largely a descent down to Lyle. But it was in 2016, one of the original proponents and myself ran through here in a day. The trail wasn't finished. 2014 it wasn't finished, and we sat halfway through the trail here. It was 10:30 in that morning, and we just knew then that, man, we've got to bring this to life. This has to be a one-day trail running event, and we made that pact to ourselves. And so 2 years later, in 2016, we gave birth to the Old Ghost Ultra. And that is a north to south 85 kilometre mountain ultra marathon, and so that's an annual event. We're in our 6th year, and that's grown an international profile. Almost a quarter of the field was international, not last year with COVID but the year before. A lot of Australians come over and do it, and So that's a hoot. We just see, it's just amazing. The people in that community are amazing. The energy that flows out of them is great. So that's just a privilege to be involved in. And necessarily we did that because we wanted to share it, but also it's a humble fundraiser for us. We've taken on the responsibility of maintaining and keeping this thing alive, and that's a responsibility we take seriously. And we don't want to be drawing, from public coffers. And so we're very much into doing what we can to generate some income to look after this trail and make it self-sustaining.
And that's a great point, because with any outlier or any entrepreneur who's out there, when they're starting their journey, they don't often realise how hard it's going to be and how much support they're going to need. How did it work for you guys? Did you, it was all voluntary to start? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. All to start with, absolutely, for years. And, I'm glad we never realised just how hard it would be, because you probably wouldn't start it, but you get hooked and you just have to keep going. So, look, we're up to 160,000 hours of volunteer effort now over the decade, and that's come sometimes in massive big instalments where we've had month-long campaigns of 15 or 20 people on the hill each day, each night, staying here, building track, to seasonal campaigns. We have a volunteer hut warden campaign now, where pretty much from October, November through to May, we have volunteers in the huts hosting and welcoming people and helping out. So it's just it's just what we need to make it work. And it's great because it keeps us focused, it keeps us thinking about people all the time and keeps us sharp. And yeah, we're fortunate to be able to rely on the goodwill of so many people. So many people have had their hands on this. This isn't about one or two or three or four people. This is about an army of people that can identify with a common cause, and our job's just been around sort of connecting them to that, and build an army and you can do anything, quite frankly.
How was the feeling when the two sides of the track connected? That day that it connected, it must have been euphoric, it must have been satisfaction.
It was amazing. It was a really misty, drizzly day, and we came in that morning. We flew in actually to the point we had two work teams working together, and we've been tracking it, watching it literally every day for that week before. When's it going to happen? So we brought in a few of the team that had had a huge part in it over the years, and when those digger buckets literally kissed and touched, and I walked back along the trail with one of the founding fathers, Weasel, Marion Boatwright, and we both got round the corner and both looked at each other and just burst into tears. And shit, I feel emotional even recounting that now. But it was just a very, it was a big moment, and it just. Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you literally, every day for that decade, every day is honest truth. For that decade before, we were thinking about how to keep moving it forward, how to beat that challenge. And so that's just a natural reaction, I guess, for anyone that feels like they've put a fair bit into something and they finally get there. Yeah.
Was it the biggest day of your life, do you think?
I'm not sure. It was monumental. I think, seeing people let loose on it, or having those events, or realising, months in when you start getting that feedback from people that, thank goodness, this wasn't folly, this was real, we were not wrong with what we were thinking, and we're hearing that. They were all big markers, so I'm not sure I could nail it down to that one moment, like those few seconds. I just think there are markers all the way through, and I could even say right now I'm just as proud of the fact that we're still around 5 short years later doing the work to make it happen and be here tomorrow for the next people, and hopefully next year and next decade for the next generation. So I find nobility in that just as much as building the thing. There's a romanticism in that, and it's not quite as romantic to just do the day in, day out work to keep the thing going, but I'm certainly, we're all up for it. Yeah.
So was there any grief once that had connected, the tracks had connected? Like some of the lads, they must have felt like they put their life's work into it. What happened to some of the boys after that, and the girls?
We gave them a day off, and then we started the work of maintaining the trail basically, and looping back. I often use this. Every time I go over the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I love looking at the fact that, well, the painters were at that end last year, and then they're there, and then they're back there the next year. So this is just the Sydney Harbour Bridge. We're just a big moving work front that moves from one end, and by the time we get to the other end, it's time to go back and start again and tickle some things up. So we still have, one of those original proponents, Steve Stacky, who was one of the 4 founding fathers, who is literally 3 kilometres away from us today, doing what he does best, still here, having built it 5 years later, looking after it. So, they're not off the hook and still doing the work.
So if Stacky's at the coalface, looking after the day-to-day running of the place with the trampers, etc., up there in the hut, who's looking after the big picture?
Yep, so we've got a team, a front country team, that is responsible for all of that, and that's got many arms to it. It's got the whole public bookings aspect and inquiries and status and condition. It's got the whole maintenance planning and operations. It's got all the hut restocking and toilet servicing and gas supplies and maintenance and repairs. It's got our fundraising. It's got our reporting, and lots of stakeholders are interested. So it is at the end of the day just like any sort of standard business where lots of people have an interest, and we've just work our way through that. So we've very much got a front country team, but the real hard, the elbow work happens in the back country. But to be fair, this doesn't exist without each other, and that's the key, is melding those two worlds and making them do what they need to do.
When you think about the start of the journey, with the lads and the map and the trail, and a couple of lads out having a walk and sussing out whether it's viable or not, and you look at it now and you see you talk about it as a living organism. It's really like any business, isn't it? You've started with nothing, you've had a vision, or even not even really a vision, it was a trial and error, and see if it even became a vision, see if it was even possible, and now is it fully sustainable now? Yeah,
we are doing it. We're standing on our feet. It is, that was a massive challenge for us in 2017, as we just applied a model that's used widely in New Zealand on other backcountry structures managed by the government, and quite frankly that model isn't sustainable for us, and it's not for the other trails as well, but it can be taxpayer subsidised. So we needed to actually look at very quickly and overnight, well, what does it need to generate to look after itself? What does that mean? Is the user prepared to pay that? And we'll give it a go. And we just couldn't die wondering. We had no choice or option, and so we've done that. We get told every day that people consider it value for money still, and so we're really proud that it stands on its feet and self-supports itself through user fees to stay in the huts. And when you look at that journey now, it's a self-sustainable organism. You must have had some significant highs and lows in that period as well. Oh, every day. I've never seen more grown adults cry in any single decade of my life, and that's the truth. So just challenges all the time, and that's just born from an absolute desperation and a desire to make it work and to repay the faith that so many people put in us, and that could be volunteers coming to give us their time, to the statutory authorities that gave us the permissions to even do this. They all put confidence and trust in us, and so deep down that's the thing that drove us just militantly every day, as we will not let those people down. And just as well that we sort of were fueled by that, because we needed every ounce of it to kind of get through. Just literally behind me here, we were doing well if we could make 4 metres a day, hacking our way through this Lyell Range granite that's just harder than, I did challenge you to find something harder in the world. And so you got to do awful lot of mental reframing to kind of think about, how are we meant to do 85,000 metres of these when we can do 4 in a day, and it's snowing or sleeting sideways. It's pretty thankless, but that's where I take my hat off to the guys like Stacky and all the crew in the field that just turned up and just kept doing it. And sure enough, there's lots of old adages, but it is true. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and sooner or later you get there. How does the conversation go in that 4 metre period of hard granite rock? How does that go? Zero. No conversation, complete silence. Everyone just in their own head, wishing they were somewhere else. No one says a thing. And I think that's something, if you turn up and the work site's noisy and everyone's giving each other jip and there's banter, they're probably having a pretty good day. When you turn up and everyone's stern and no one's saying a thing, you know that, you get to read those non-verbal signs pretty quickly. And obviously a tight team's important in those situations. How did you deal with those
So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of them. How did you deal with them?
I wasn't in the backcountry enough to, be integral in making that happen on a daily basis. But one thing is you learn is, if you can keep people warm at night, feed them well, and they can get a good night's sleep, then you're winning. And so, we had small teams and we had individual sleeping spaces that if anyone needs to snore, no one's keeping anyone else. That'll ruin a team spirit faster than anything in the backcountry. So those three ingredients, and I don't say it flippantly, are pretty central to keeping some team morale going, and just kind of sharing that progress and that bigger picture, and there's no other way to do it. It is about, again, we throw around all these cliches, but it is about, eating the elephant one bite at a time. You just can't get ahead of yourself.
What happens when emotion's up? I know intelligence goes down, but did you have some moments where the boys were bluing, or it was, like...
Oh, yeah, there's always dark moments, isn't there? And, and things aren't going your way, and those smallest things, you see that in any environment. I listen with interest sometimes to those, transatlantic rowers where two people need to spend 4 months in a rowing boat together. And, I love thinking around the dynamics that, and how you traverse those sorts of situations. So all of those factors come into play when you've got small, tight teams in the backcountry for a week or weeks at a time, just, working on a bit of rock that's half a metre in front of your face. So, you need all of the skills under the sun to kind of get through that.
Was there someone who oversaw that? Was that your role, or was it just?
No, that's their team. Stacky was a team leader for sure in the building days, and we had other teams that evolved as the project went on, but. No, we're very much in the front country, and it's, wave goodbye and wish them well as they head into the hills for the start of a shift, and say hello when they come out, and, that's about the extent of it.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Especially for guys, right? Guys don't like to talk about how they're feeling, but their actions will tell you how they're feeling.
Correct, absolutely.
And if you've got an 85,000 metre project, it's going to have some ups and downs.
Yep, it is. Yep.
So once the track was finalised, you've connected, the kissing of the diggers. It's like you've just given birth, haven't you? So what happened next?
Learning how to run it and operate it, and you learn a lot, and you learn a lot very quickly. It was kind of, we talk about, it was like having just a big water main tap turned on in our face, and it just all started. So you certainly don't walk to run, you kind of just start running straight away and moving with it. So, just all of the issues around booking. We were lucky though in that things ramped up, and so we had time to grow with it, but we were a pretty small, nimble, light charitable trust, and so one of the great strengths and the things I'm thankful for is we could make decisions very quickly and move very quickly, and because we hadn't done this before and we hadn't come from a system where that's the way you do it, we would just look at everything from a first principles basis and say, well, I think we should do this. I think that's what the market needs, and that seems appropriate and fitting in the backcountry, so we'll give it a go. So that was a huge part of, the challenge and the fun of it too. And so there are some things that are unique and different about the Old Ghost Road that are not perhaps the standard prescription in the backcountry, that, just give it a little twist in its own unique style, and we're really proud of those little things. Yep.
And as a charitable trust, for those of the viewers who aren't familiar with a charitable trust, it's not a business, is it? It's more of an entity that's...
It's a not-for-profit. Yeah. It's just a shell, and you need that shell to hang things on, and, to apply for things and to administer things. So, correct. Our sole reason for being is to give life and continue life for a backcountry recreational asset, which has social benefits and also environmental benefits. And so, to answer your question before, that's one of the things that we really started turning on when we opened, which was our environmental actions on the trail. And so we've got a network of just under 1,000 predator traps throughout this trail, and they are around suppressing predatory species like rats and stoats, and so I hope rats will make sense. Stoats are like a little weasel or a ferret to those that are not from these parts, and they are just so destructive to New Zealand's endemic and ground, or flightless birds. And so that was something that we had a strong sense of from the beginning, as we are setting forth into this amazing realm, and it's our responsibility to try and help fight the fight that the real inhabitants of this place struggle with. And so we've been doing that work in earnest since 2015 and have been slowly ramping it up year by year and are starting to see some really good gains. And it's an absolute hoot because we've got such a good kind of an appreciation of how the seasons and the years flow here. It's easy to spot the change, and we have an amazing sense of pride in seeing, the abundance of some species start to increase and the populations disperse into valleys where they weren't, etc. So that's something that we want to continue to do and expand as we move forward.
That's it. So you had a real environmental and social focus, but yet you've really got to run it like a group of entrepreneurs as a business, don't you?
Correct.
In the same mindset.
Spot on. But those two realms complement each other so beautifully, and I guess our biggest enemy is, complacency and bureaucracy, and we're always on guard for that. We just try and keep it lean, mean and agile so that we can respond quickly and move, and we get a hoot out of that, I really do, and long may that last.
And you're the chairman of the trust?
Correct. I'm the chairperson of the trust. And
so how do you deal with the politics and obviously you mentioned lean and mean, and how else would you do it? Because obviously there are going to be times where you've got different stakeholders with different requirements. Yeah,
correct. And look, we're never home and hose. That's just an ongoing journey, so to speak, and it's an intensely contentious area, I guess, is how should we engage with our special places and our wild places in our backcountry. And there's a wide spectrum of kind of philosophies or ideologies around what's right and what's wrong or how we should. And so we've always been clear, and we're not backwards in coming forwards about the fact that we think that unless you get to know an area, you'll never understand it. Unless you understand it, you'll never love it. And so we think that by letting people into these sorts of special places, they get a deeper connection to them and they'll be a better advocate for them. That's just our philosophy. That's what we believe in. Absolutely happy to accept that other people may say, no, the best thing that can be done is don't let anyone into these places, don't do a thing. And I accept that, and it's real because we hear from some of those people that have those views. Thankfully, thousands tell us each year that this was just the most amazing gift for them and their families or their brothers and their sisters or partners coming through and, seeing nature on its own terms. And on the other hand, we hear from maybe a couple of individuals in a year. So we're comfortable that what we're doing is, we think the right thing to do, and get more people connected with, the outdoors and what's important. And hopefully that just means that's more pairs of hands to take up the fight and help out, because it needs it.
And people vote with their feet and they vote with their wallet. Has that been your best form of marketing, was word of mouth from the start?
Absolutely. We have a marketing budget that is a big fat zero, always have. We have a few people contact us and say, oh man, who did your marketing plan? And we never have, and we fundamentally believe in that. And I know this goes against the grain probably of marketing theory, but we just know that if we can focus on doing what we can directly control, which is make the experience good, make the physical assets good, the rest will take care of itself. And we measure that, and so we know that 80% of the people that come and do the Old Coast Road are coming because their friends or family told them. It's not 80 or 90% came because they saw it on Instagram. And so as long as that metric holds, we will continue to do what we do, which is just, we'll focus on keeping it right, and hopefully people will keep coming, and then as they have been doing to date, hopefully they will keep telling their neighbours or their friends or their family that, wow, that was pretty good, you should do it.
So if you're at university and you were teaching a young outlier about marketing, that's not something they really would teach as much as the how-to stuff, is it? That's a real deep feeling connection thing, isn't it? It's
a deep feeling connection, and look, I'm by no means an expert, but I've thought about this a lot of because it's important. It's what we live on, and I think it's about expectation management. So I just get the sense that the world operates on this glossy, superficial way of putting everything out there and making the world believe that you're the best and you're better than anything. And I'm kind of thinking, if that's where you're pitching it, but the reality is somewhat below, then what really is that user going to feel when they come along, you know? And so our view is keep our head down, you know, do the work, and we're just stoked if people discover for themselves that, wow, that was pretty special, rather than us telling you, gee, this is pretty special, you should come and have a go. And that's just where we decide to draw the line, and that's how we've gone about our business.
It's very Kiwi, isn't it? Understated,
I think
over-deliver.
so. It's easy to do. It lets us focus, as I say, on the work and not get distracted by creating a lot of noise, you know? Yeah.
How close would the adventurous mindset of any person be in relation to being an entrepreneur, do you think? And utilising your story, your journey with the team?
Well, I think really close. I'm only thinking on my feet and on the fly, but I think it's around risk and calculated risk. So I think that's what adventurers and outliers are doing all the time. They're taking calculated risks, and they can face adversity, and they can weather adversity or endure it, and that's necessary, and live to kind of get through it. So, you know, I think those two things probably go hand in hand, to be fair. Yeah, I don't think they're foreign or mutually exclusive, at least. Yeah.
Well, you're proof of that, aren't you? The Old Ghost Road is proof of that, and the team is proof of that. So that makes me think, who was the catalyst at the very start who said, hey, I've got this really cool idea, explain the idea. Some of the lads jumped in, had a little, you know, bit of a couple of walks. At what point did you say, we're in? And what made that decision? Was that the beer talking, or? No,
so 2007, this old survey map fell into the hands of Weasel, okay? So Weasel got that initial spark, like, oh, I wonder what's here. Weasel, by his own admission, wasn't, you know, very, very capable, adventurous spirit, but he's clever as heck, and he cottoned on to Stacky, who was a bushman of this country for decades and had been up and through here doing all sorts of things. And so he collared Stacky, right, Stacky, get in here with me and we'll traipse up and down and see what's here. They started this sort of process of, I think this is technically feasible, and then one by one sort of started roping in a few others of us. Wayne flew helicopters at the time. That was absolutely necessary to try and get across this rugged, remote place to even get a sense of it. And yes, I entered, you know, shortly thereafter, and then it's just this gross snowballing effect. And we often, because we started our work down here in the southern end in the Lyell, we call it the Lyell flu. So we sort of got a mild dose of the Lyell flu. It became more of an affliction in 2008, and by 2009 we were just rampantly struck by the Lyell flu, and an addiction, and you know, and everyone that touched it just got sucked into this big black hole, and we just kept fueling it, basically, and did that with all these lovely little milestones that, you know, we'd tick them off and feel pretty good, and we could grow some confidence, and that's what we did. We never conceived it, you know, end to end as a mountain biking trail. It was initially end to end as, I wonder if we can make that a tramping route. You know, I'd done a fair bit of mountain biking and realised that, wow, I think this could be something special from a mountain biking perspective. We started thinking about that in sort of 2009, and that just coincided with this New Zealand government initiative that grew out of the global financial crisis around starting these cycle trails in New Zealand. And so, well, we think we've got a great idea, and, you know, we threw our name in the hat for those prospective trails, and that caught fire, and that's history. And so it's just, you know, there was never one single event, but there's this amazing collision and confluence of events and people over many years that just wound this up. Yeah. What
was your biggest, when Weasel, Stacky and Wayne came to you and they said, we need you, or we want you, or whatever they said, what got you? What was it the vision? Because obviously this is a business question, right, where you're trying to engage other people in your vision. They were trying to engage you in the vision. What was it that got you?
There's a couple of factors. You know, in a general sense, it's just, I think everyone loves a challenge, and we all had the sense early on that this is probably a once in a lifetime opportunity here to do something special. And so there was an aspect of the challenge that was certainly enticing, but I'd also been involved here in the extractive industry and coal mining, and, you know, the times were good back then, but we all knew that that was never going to last. And so honestly, deep down, I always had this sense around what next for this place, you know. And I found it ironic. I'd only moved here in 2005 and fell in love with the outdoors, yet I found that they were relatively underutilised, you know, and most of the activity in life was lived in the front country, other than, you know, some hardy few. And I just So that was a sense of, do you know what, this is a part of our identity here, and and coasters are so capable and rugged, enduring in these landscapes, and so it just seemed like this is who we are, this celebrates who we are. I think this is a very good idea, and if we can do this right and sensitively, then we're not drawing hard on Mother Nature. We're doing it in a way that, like I say, can connect people to it, and overall it can be in a better place. So they were kind of two of the driving forces, the sense of helping this transition to what else are we about here, and the fact that it just seemed like a really big, good, dirty challenge.
It also sounds like you're quite future focused, because you could see the transition from coal, which I know is big on the West Coast. Is it big nowadays?
It's not as big nowadays. No, it's not at all. It's still very important, very important. But no, it's, I think there's a few people around that, absolutely agree that there's been peak coal has happened, but, it's still a major employer here. There's still a massive resource, and, it's primarily coking coal for steel making here. It's not thermal coal for electricity. And so, until the world comes up with a way to make, steel without coal, well then, that demand cycle continues.
And you could see it though as at some point it's got to end, so how else can we utilise the asset that we've got?
Yeah, and I don't think that's rocket science. I don't want to claim any great credit, but I think that's a responsibility that when the going's good, you've got to recognise that, but you've got to look behind it and say this isn't forever, and what next? How do you add layers and diversity to what keeps this place alive and going, and it's been so amazing in just the decade or the 15 years I've been here to see, the Heafy track just up the road here existed, but that's been opened again for mountain biking. We've got the Paparoa track, which is a great walk, but mountain bikeable just south of here. And so this region now is becoming known as a mecca for insanely great outdoor experiences on a mountain bike or tramping. And I'm really proud of that, because it's what's special about the place, and I think that's what our responsibility is play to your strengths, do what you're good at, and don't try and fabricate something that you're not good at.
Well, I'm also feeling though, it's not just about you guys, right? There's a massive desire to make a difference here.
Absolutely there is, absolutely. Life's short, and I think that is, everyone says it and knows it, but when you have an opportunity to do something that can hopefully pass that baton on to a generation or people in a stronger position or a better state, then I think we need to play our role in that, and that's what we're trying to do. As
well as a legacy item.
Yeah, correct.
What is the long-term vision?
The long-term vision is to absolutely turn up the environmental efforts, the predator control efforts, the ecological efforts, to continue to be self-sustaining, to see those amazing changes changes in demographic around more families and younger ones getting involved. It'll be great to see the internationals come back post-COVID. We were up to almost 15% internationals before COVID, put that on skids, and just seeing people just love and enjoy and celebrate and come and stay and play and understand what's special about our little part of the world, and be hosted so warmly by the locals that only the locals can do. It's distinctly West Coast here, and no one else can get close to that. So being proud of who we are.
Well, speaking of being hosted warmly, I want to say a big thank you for myself, for the viewers, for having us here on the Old Ghost Road. Look at that vista in the backdrop there, absolutely spectacular. To the viewers, maybe the camera doesn't do it justice, but when you are here, it's like you're on top of the world. It has a real awe feeling, and you can feel it in your heart as I can right now. It's quite emotive, isn't it, Phil?
Yeah, it's I can say, having spent a lot of time on the project and on the ground here, I always have a moment. Every time I'm here, I take a moment just to suck it up and soak it in, and I hope that never diminishes or goes away. It's a privilege to be here. We've always understood that, and I think that's something that if we continue to hold dear, it will stand us in good stead. We're just here on Mother Nature's terms. We are just fleeting guests, and it's our job to, tread lightly and hand it on in good shape.
Well, Phil, you're an outlier, your team's certainly an outlier, and the Old Ghost Road is certainly one of the best outlier episodes I've ever been part of, and I can't wait to head up to the hut for a few beers and then discuss our next journey through here and on the mountain bikes.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Cool. Good, mate.
Well, there it is, guys. I hope you enjoyed this inspiring Outlier episode with Phil Rossiter on the Old Ghost Road. For more videos, information and resources, go to outlier.tv or connect with us on our social media pages below. I'm Andrew McComb, and here's to living the outlier life outside of the comfort zone. I'll see you soon.